Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we're checking out a socket 1150 motherboard from China, and it's generic. I've got no idea who actually made it. I requested this motherboard from Banggood. They sent it to our channel to have some fun and to check it out. There are some links down below in the description. So we will have a look what's inside the box. We will check out the motherboard layout. I will definitely have a look at the chipset because the article description was a bit confusing. It mentioned the H81 as well as the B85 chipset. We're going to have a look at the BIOS. What options do we get, and does it support overclocking? We're going to use the Pentium Anniversary Edition. Then we're going to install Windows 10. We will check out the driver CD that's in the box. What is on there? Anything interesting? We will run CPU set and see if we can find any interesting information about this motherboard, and of course run some benchmarks. In terms of what's written on the box, well, there's just this barcode and a few model numbers of some sorts. I'll show it to you, maybe you know a little bit more about it, but otherwise there's no information on the box. It's just a cardboard box. So let's have a look inside. Let's open up the box and see what we're getting. Okay, so just gonna focus the camera one more time. We've got a SATA cable. We're getting the rear I/O shield. There's a driver disk. What does it say? Motherboard, Intel series, driver CD for H81 B85 chipset express installer driver CD. And here we've got some paperwork. So this is actually a Bitcoin mining motherboard, but we're gonna look at it from the angle of gaming, of course. Japanese solid capacitors, lower RDS MOSFETs, ferrite core chokes, ultra durable H81 B85 chipset. So which one is it? Not quite sure. Let's see if there's any more information here. So LGA 1150 H81 B85 chipset. It supports 2 DDR3 sticks with up to 8 gig. We've got a Realtek only fast Ethernet, not even gigabit. Wow, I haven't seen that for a long time. It's got an integrated Realtek audio chip, 4 SATA 3 gigabits per second ports. We've got PS2, VGA, but we're going to look at all that stuff later. Micro ATX. I don't think that's correct, but we'll see later. Here's a picture of the layout of what this board looks like. And we've got some information here about the front panel connector. That's good to know. There's a clear CMOS jumper. And here's a little page about the BIOS. Alrighty. Let's take a closer look at the motherboard. Here we go. Okay, so let's take a closer look. We've got 4 SATA ports. This is our USB 3.0 front header. We've got 2 USB 2.0 front headers, front panel connector, speaker connector, that would be clear CMOS. COM, that might be a serial port. That's an audio connector. We've got 5 PCI Express 1X and 1 PCI Express 16X, and that would be the chipset. We've got the CMOS battery. This is the socket. It's labeled with 115X. So once again, not sure if this really is an 1150. Maybe it's a 51 or 55 or something like that. We've got 2 slots for RAM, DDR3. We've got our CPU 12 volt connector here, but some additional power connectors there, very likely to drive more current to these PCI Express slot. Makes sense if it's a mining motherboard. There's a little cooler here for the VRMs, and we've got the 24 pin connector here. And at the back we've got 2 PS2 ports for keyboard and mouse, VGA, HDMI. We've got 2 USB 2s, 2 USB 3s, Ethernet, and our audio ports, our inputs and outputs. Now, before I'm going to put this on a test bench, I really want to double check what chipset it is. So I'm gonna remove the heatsink and we'll have a look what's actually underneath. So here we have the chipset. Well, there are no markings on it, so that really didn't do anything. There's a sticker here, it does mention H81. So we'll just have to install Windows and run some diagnostic software to see what chipset we actually have. Okay, let's put it on our test bench, and well, the first thing that stands out is this motherboard is tiny. So over here we got full ATX, and most motherboards they go around here, but this one is extremely short. But anyway, let's secure it to the test bench. Okay, so let's install the processor. Let's remove this cap here. Alrighty, so we will find out if this processor fits. Should go this way. Yep, that seems to be an 1155 just fine. Alrighty, we've got to add some thermal grease. Just a bit of a blob in the center. And of course, our processor cooler. Now I can see that this motherboard has the holes for 11.5X as well as 775, so you can use an older CPU cooler if you if you're still stuck on a 775 one. So let's quickly push all these pins down. And that's it. Plug in the fan. And we're good to go. And let's add some memory. Let's go with 8 gig. So I've got 2 sticks of 4 gig each. Okay, it's gonna be a bit tight. Okay, no problem. I just thought we're gonna have some issues here with the clearance, but that's all good. Let's add the second one. And there we go. Okay, so let's hook up everything else. We've got the power supply here, 24 pin. And of course we need the auxiliary power connector that plugs in over here, just like that. And we also need an SSD. So let's plug that into here. We need some power. There we go. And we've got 4 SATA. This is the first one. Let's go with this one. Alrighty, I think we are good to go. I will need a keyboard, but I'm just gonna fire it up and see if everything actually works. But otherwise, we are... Okay, so I just turned on the unit and I'm hammering the delete key to get into the BIOS. And here we are. So let's load the optimal defaults and we're gonna start fresh. American Megatrends. Okay, we can plug in the date here. What else have we got? Power management, the usual options here. What else? ACPI options, enable, disable. That's all there. Okay, CPU configuration. Here we can see our processor, 3.2 gigahertz, the caches and so on. Okay, we can disable one core. That's awesome. That might be interesting for some Windows XP retro gaming, to do some core comparisons, single core to dual core. Execute this disable bit, virtualization. Okay, it's actually got quite a few options, to be honest. Boot performance mode, max non-turbo performance, turbo performance. Okay, so quite a few options, to be honest. Alrighty, let's get out of this. SATA configuration, we can toggle between RD and AHCI. We're definitely going to go with AHCI to install Windows 10. Our SSD already shows up. The other ports have nothing attached. Alrighty, USB configuration. We've got USB 3, legacy support, and so on. All the usual stuff. That's for network boot, I believe. So the controller is turned on. Super I/O chip, 0 ports. I'm just going to disable the 0 ports. I don't need them. And we've got the hardware monitor here. So temperatures and voltages and all the usual stuff. And okay, we have some fan controls as well, automatic mode. But my fan is not PWM, so I can't use that. Okay, so we can kind of define the slope, the start, PWM, interesting. And manual mode, how does that work? Ah, okay, so we can dial in the actual PWM value. Let's see where the limits are. From, okay, up to 255, probably from 0 to 255. That's pretty neat. If you just wanna, for example, lock in the speed at 80% or something like that. Alrighty, chipset. Okay, we can do something here with the graphics. Overclocking support for the graphics, nice. Okay, that's definitely interesting. Graphics core limit, lots of options here, but we're not gonna do any overclocking just yet. Primary display, we can toggle between the internal and external graphics and so on. HD audio, HDMI audio. Alrighty, turbo, what have we got here? That's Intel speed step, we can turn that on or off. Turbo mode, one core limit ratio. This might be the overclocking, let's have a look. Is that where you can set the turbo? So that's something I'll definitely check out later if that actually works in Windows. That would be really cool. Interesting that you can just disable speed step like that. Okay, and what else have we got? Let's turn that back on. Can I toggle these other options? Ah, dim profile, default, custom XMP. So there are also a lot of options going on, but how can I change the memory speed? Okay, oh, CPU voltage. Okay, there's some basic voltage control for the processor and also for the memory. That's also interesting. And here I can do my boot order and stuff like that. Alrighty, I made a few changes. I just want to be double sure. So I'm going to load the optimal settings again. And yeah, that looks pretty good. There are a couple of interesting options I saw. Overclocking the processor with the turbo. That's definitely something I want to check out. And also the memory profiles. If we can maybe use 1600 megahertz or something like that. Okay, I'm gonna get Windows 10 on a USB stick and we're gonna install Windows next. So I wasn't able to find a way to get into the boot menu, but over here is just a boot override. So we're just gonna boot from the USB flash drive. Okay, here we are. Windows 10 is installed. I've done all the updates and here we can see the specifications. So the processor does seem to run at full throttle, so speed step is indeed deactivated. We saw the BIOS option earlier, so that's definitely something I will check out next. So the motherboard manufacturer, OEM, wow, and the model is Intel H81. However, it seems to be a B85 chipset. Yeah, the memory runs at 66, so that's 133, but the memory could run faster. So I will have a go at getting that faster memory profile working, and we will definitely look at overclocking the CPU as well as the graphics. I've got GPU sets here somewhere, so we can see the clock speed 350. So we're gonna ramp that up and see if we're getting any improvement. The user manual mentions SATA 3, but the controller is definitely SATA 6. We're getting some nice speed with the SSD. I also wanted to double check the Ethernet controller, and we have a gigabit Ethernet controller. So the manual stating it's a fast Ethernet is incorrect. We have a full PCI Express gigabit Ethernet controller from Realtek. Here we have Minecraft running on our Chinese mining motherboard. So that's all looking great. Now, next up, we're going to have a look at overclocking. Now, the Intel B85 chipset doesn't officially support overclocking, but I do remember that a lot of motherboard vendors back in the day found ways around that, but I'm not quite sure if this motherboard will do it. It certainly has all the BIOS options, but that doesn't mean that it's gonna work. So we're gonna check out overclocking the processor, of course, and also the memory. The memory we're using today is capable of running at 1600 megahertz, and out of the box it runs at 1333. So stay tuned for some overclocking. Let's turn on speed step. There we go, so that's all working. We can see that it clocks down to 800 megahertz and lowers the multiplier, and we can see the same going on in hardware info. And if we stress the processor, we can see that the clock speed goes up and so does the multiplier. Okay, next up, let's see if we can overclock the CPU. The Pentium Anniversary Edition is fully unlocked. Alrighty, so we go to turbo mode enabled, and let's go with 40. Let's see if we can go to 4 gigahertz. It's a nice round number. Okay, so this BIOS option didn't really change anything. We're still running at 3.2 gigahertz with a 32x multiplier. So I'll go back in the BIOS and have a look if there's any other options that we need to turn on. Okay, so let's have a look. CPU configuration, overclocking lock. Okay, well, we don't want an overclocking lock. What else is here? Oh, boot performance mode. Maximum non-turbo performance. Turbo performance. Okay, let's see if that changes anything. Well, that also didn't change anything. We're still stuck at 3.2 gigahertz. So I'll go once more back into the BIOS and see if there's any other options that we need to change. Okay, let's try this option here. Overclocking lock. Maybe that is something that we need to turn on. So I played around some more with trying to overclock the processor, but it's just not happening. It just keeps getting stuck at 3.2 gigahertz. So yeah, that's one of the issues with such a motherboard, the BIOS support. And look, there's no website, nowhere to turn to get a BIOS update or to contact the manufacturer and ask them, hey, is overclocking supported on the motherboard? It's got all the options in the BIOS, but they just don't seem to do anything. Let's try to increase the memory speed. So dim profile, custom profile control, and okay, here, memory frequency limiter. Let's change that to 1600. We leave everything else hopefully by default. Let's restart the machine, and I'm gonna go straight back into the BIOS and see if we can see if those settings got applied. So didn't have much luck with the Kingston memory trying to run it at 1600 megahertz. I swapped out the RAM, so I'm just gonna have a look what SPT readings we have here. So we're running at 133 again, which is this one, but we've got an XMP profile here for 1600, so we're gonna go with that. So let me just double check the timings. 90924, that's this one. Alrighty, so let's reboot and let's see if we can enable the XMP profile. Okay, so we go to turbo. Let's have a look. Okay, we can see here XMP profile 1 is supported. So dim profile, XMP profile 1, and I think that's it. Restart. Alrighty, that's looking good. Let's go back into CPU set and see if we're getting the higher clock speed on our memory. So no, it still runs at 698. Very odd. So that did not work. I was expecting to see 800 here. Yeah, so yeah, interesting. Doesn't seem to work that well. I'm gonna try another option in the BIOS, not the XMP, but just changing the memory speed. So let's just quickly restart the machine. So it did the same thing as with the Kingston memory. The machine basically just turned off and then turned itself on again. And I fear that we're still stuck on 667 megahertz for the memory. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it seems like we're not having much luck with locking in the higher clock speeds of our RAM sticks. So reducing the memory frequency actually did work. So maybe this is a limitation of the processor or the B85 chipset. I'll have to do a bit of online research. This is the only Haswell processor I have, but assuming it's an unlocked version, I basically assume that it supports overclocking the memory as well as the multiplier. Okay guys, I think it's time to wrap up this video. So here we got Minecraft running on a mining motherboard. So quite an interesting project. I was really eager to check out, especially the BIOS. So what is the verdict? Well, the motherboard definitely works fine. I had no issues whatsoever. So in that aspect, it's it works great and you shouldn't have any issues. But the big letdown was definitely the overclocking and the BIOS, and there's no one to turn to. So really the BIOS that you're getting, that's pretty much it. There's not much else you can do. There's no one to turn to ask for support. So we used an unlocked processor. We couldn't change the multiplier to overclock the CPU, and we also had issues trying 2 different sets of RAM sticks to make them run at 1600 megahertz. Overclocking the video card, I had the onboard GPU, had a quick go at that. I also I didn't get very far with that. So yeah, that's basically the summary. Not a bad board. I do like the layout. It's nice and compact, and it's PCI Express only, which I like. I don't like those legacy PCI slots. I've got retro motherboards for that stuff. For the modern stuff, I'm happy to just go with PCI Express. The layout is nice in terms of cable management and everything, and yeah, otherwise it's a fairly good motherboard, but the BIOS options are a bit of a letdown, and that basically sums it up. So do let me know down below in the video description if you have any questions about this motherboard. I'll leave it on my test bench for a while to follow up with any things that you want me to check out. But that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I shall see you soon with another one.